Welcome to Inside Albania with me, Alice Taylor. As temperatures rise and many of us are preparing to wind down for summer, the Albanian news cycle apparently has no intention of slowing down. In this week's show, I'll be discussing the Albanian police raid on an Iranian opposition compound near Durrës, the potential for blockchain technology in the Albanian property sector, and what is behind the US and EU stance towards Kosovo amid simmering tensions with Serbia. I'll also be joined by a total of 4 guests this week. So without further ado, let's get started. On Tuesday, Albanian police raided the compound of the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, otherwise known as MEK, near Tirana, resulting in resistance, injuries, and 1 death. Now, MEK is an Iranian opposition military group seeking to overthrow the current regime in Tehran. While previously being designated as a terrorist organization, this was lifted in the 2000s and they were relocated to Albania with Western support, where they've remained in a heavily guarded compound ever since. The country's court against corruption and organized crime is investigating MEK members for 6 offenses, including provocation of war, illegal interception of computer data, interference in computer data, interference in computer systems, and the misuse of equipment. Police on the scene tried to seize computers and servers, but residents were unwilling to hand them over. The Albanian Interior Minister Bledi Tutsi condemned MEK for their violent response to the police operation and raised concerns about their activities in Albania, while MEK claims the police are violating their human rights and are now backed by the Tehran regime. They have called on the EU and the US to intervene. In March 2021, MEK was accused by Facebook of running a troll farm out of their base in Albania, closing more than 300 accounts belonging to members. In a statement published on its website at the time, Facebook said it had investigated and disrupted a long-running operation from Albania that targeted primarily Iran. Over the years, many questions have been asked about MEK, with The Guardian questioning whether they're terrorists, cultists, or champions of Iranian democracy, and The New York Times describing a visit to their compound as propaganda sessions. Now, those who've reported on MEK with a critical view or questioned their presence in Albania have reported harassment and even smear campaigns. Now, in 2019, I was invited to an event at the Manza compound, and I spent a couple of hours inside before getting rather freaked out and going home early. Now, Albania's relationship with MEK has been strong up until now, while its relations with Iran have deteriorated. Last year, Iranian hackers targeted Albania's government computer systems, leading to sanctions and the expulsion of Iranian diplomats. Now, the recent raid highlights the complex dynamics surrounding MEK, as well as putting Albania in a rather interesting position regarding relations with Tehran. I have with me today online Andy Hojai, a lecturer in law at UCL in the UK. Good morning, Andy. First question, MEK blames the police, and the police blame MEK for the scenes we saw this week. What's your view on what we've seen and the statements that we've heard so far from both sides?
So there's been a lot of disinformation coming, and it's a bit difficult to cut through some of those. And the issue is because the very core of the deal between Albania and MEK and the partners is not transparent, so we don't quite know. So MEK is claiming that the Albanian police shouldn't enter their territory where they are staying, and therefore they are violating their rights and freedoms. However, they do not have a diplomatic stay in Albania, and therefore they cannot be classified as an embassy. And if there's a court order, in this case where SPAC has allegedly claimed, therefore the police has the right to enter and to make those searches and to make and to verify all of those claims. So that's the very bottom of this issue. Having said that, the whole issue and the raid, in retrospect, I'm sure it could have been handled better by both sides, because we can clearly see that the violent as well as the alleged death in this scenario that has resulted in a very high political tension.
And I mean, that's going to be my next question. What are the political repercussions for this in terms of relations with MEK, relations with Iran, and relations with MEK's allies, for one, the US?
So this has been the biggest backdrop of this, because for a while they were kind of outside the spotlights, but all of a sudden now we have a number of statements. So for example, the US State Department has said it's entirely up to Albania now to decide what they are going to do with MEK, and the US has clarified that they do not see them as the viable alternative opposition in Iran. So therefore, their position has been jeopardized in this scenario. Furthermore, it has raised a lot of suspicions both by Albania and many of its allies about their activities in that specific compound and in terms of how they are reacting. Furthermore, we can also see in Albania, where they have welcomed them, how they are reacting to this specific clash and in terms of the activities, and how it has also put the Albanian national security in jeopardy. Where it comes with Iran, we have seen that Iran has claimed, especially the foreign affairs spokesperson, to say, well, you are now kind of finding out what we have been saying all along. So that is kind of an interesting dynamic. But however, their future will very much rely on what the next geopolitical development will be, because the US and the EU is in talks with Iran, and it seems like they are going to move forward with the nuclear weapon agreement, and therefore they could become part of some sort of grand scheme deal.
So we could potentially see the Iranian embassy opening up again at some point in the future.
Very much we could see that, and I think we could also see some form of normalization, and that would also depend in the war in Ukraine. We are also seeing that Iran is playing some sort of a role in the background, so that could very much happen, and therefore their position would be jeopardized. But we could also see France, for example, which is also another big host of MEK, has stopped some of their activities in France and is taking a bit of a back seat when it comes to their position.
Now, as I said earlier, Facebook sort of raised an issue around MEK in 2021 about this supposed troll farm. And, you know, there are journalists in Albania who have asked questions about their presence and sort of what they've been up to while they've been here. Now, feel free not to answer. I don't want to put you in an awkward position, but do you think MEK were or are up to no good?
So first thing first, I think Albania in principle has done the very right thing to welcome them, as long as they are prosecuted politically. I think Albania would be the last country to prosecute or to judge a group of people and to generalize all of them that they might be to not good, especially given our history that we were under communism for 50 years. So therefore, we should understand and protect them from that perspective. Having said that, if there are a number of them that have engaged in illegal activities and where they are breaking the agreements, they should be brought to justice, and that should be clarified, and that should be made quite clear to them that if they're putting the host country into jeopardy, and if they're having a negative impact. I mean, we saw last year after Iran cyber attacked Albania, the team service, people couldn't get in and out of the country, and actually happened on the very weekend where we had the most tourists in the country. So the repercussions economically were quite severe. So from that perspective, it has put our position and our mindset. However, I would reframe, and I would kindly ask all the journalists and the opinionists on this to kind of reframe for generalizing all of them, because I'm sure not all of them are up to no good. But having said that, I would very much like to support SPAC on this, because it's a very new structure and it's actually taking very concrete investigation on a number of spheres in Albania. And I think we should back them and support them on this very investigation and wait for the final detail before we make our minds up in terms of what we should be doing in the future.
Andy, thank you very much for your very balanced and comprehensive response there. Now, on to the next story, from Iranian cybercrime to blockchain.